Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Be My Own Boss podcast. It's being simulcast on both Rideshare Rodeo channel and the Be My Own Boss podcast. So if you're not subscribed to the Be My Own Boss podcast, I've just said it 3 times so quickly now. Please look in the show notes. It's one of the first links down there, and it just simply go over subscribe, because trying to get some of these over there, because many of you who have met Mike through some of the things we've done, or even just through these. But if you look back, we've done a lot of pieces together for a lot of years, and he has a lot more to say. So we're trying to build this out so that when he wants to do other things too, he's now feeling much more comfortable. We've had discussions. And so I think you guys are going to want to be subscribed to it. I guess the point is, if you think that it's just synced up like this, and that's the only thing we're doing, like, so why subscribe to both? It won't be. There will be other things happening on that channel you will want to check out. That is my point. Mike is a very smart man, and this is my co-host today, Mr. Mike Hruby.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for that that praise. My head's exploding.
So if you guys did not see my piece 13 this week, I would say after this or whatever, go make sure you watch that too, because that is more from the driver perspective. About what we're going to talk about here too. I asked Mike if we could discuss that on here too, because he sees it from a different way. And so mine was from the driver perspective, and I kind of ripped this thing apart, this Massachusetts minimum wage pay that, you know, every driver's gonna get. First of all, first thing we're both gonna just hate on is that it shows it as $32.50 an hour. We all know that means an active hour. And for those listening who might not know what an active hour is, that means that if I'm on an app for 5 hours, how much of that time am I actually doing work? Meaning going to pick up the passenger, having the passenger in the car, to dropping them off. So any time where I'm sitting idle and waiting for a ping, that is not active time. So therefore, it's not $32.50 an hour. It's $32.50 for the time you take rides. Most people know that. I just wanted to make it clear. But I talked about the driver end, and I wanted Mike to jump in on this too, because he's got some things to say about, also, for those that don't know, he lives in Massachusetts, but he's got some things to say about this from different even angles on how it looks. So I'm going to let him take it from here. And again, make sure you watch 13 from the driver's perspective too.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve. And I want to say that this is 2013. This is 11 years since we issued our initial report on this very wording that they mentioned in the settlement agreement. And we wrote a 8-page report with all fact, 12-page. We had titled it "Reopening the Main Road to Self-Employment in Massachusetts." And this is about Chapter 149, Section 148B, sub A. Same thing. We said at that time it was a horrible law. It hurt everybody that it touches. And it has now come back unchanged. It's now back 11 years later as a national headline. So here's my thing though. Is it back, or has it just constantly been losing, but in a fight the whole time? No, it has not been losing. It's been like a latent army that could attack at any time. Its orders were suppressed by this was 2004 that they made this, that they changed the wording and made it what it is today. In 2008, the then state attorney general, not the same one we have now, said, you know, this really is a problematic bill, and it's problematic for Massachusetts because we have so many industries that rely on independent contracting that somebody pays the taxes on every exchange, whether it's the buyer or the seller, everyone pays, what they have to, and it's all goes public through, it goes above the table. We're not going to prosecute. And except, and this is the fine print, we will prosecute if there's some headlines to be made and you've got a big opportunity to make us famous and you embarrassed, and for us to pound back in small business. Well, It's not small business. It's two of the largest businesses in the industry. And, Uber is, fantastically large. So in stock value. So here it is today, it's headlines, and they ignored the 2008. What the first page or two says basically is that we duked this out for 4 years with these companies, and they finally knuckled under that this unfair test is bigger than they are. There's no justice in that law. There is only state power to penalize people, as we've seen, and not put them in jail, not yet, but that can come later. So this is a very difficult bill for employers. Every single employer in the country, particularly those who are in businesses that appeal to a lot of participants, like rideshare and delivery, are going to say, "Oh my God, that's a lot of money," And if they didn't have so much stock to help them pay for it one way or another, they put a normal business out of, even a normal large business right out of business. So they've got to be questioning their business model. They've got to be questioning their pricing. There is a lot going on. I'm sure that the party in power in this state is high-fiving all the way down to the city councilman level. This is fantastic. We've got these guys, we've got them in our grip. So I could literally talk for an hour or two about the difficulties that I foresee, both for rideshare and delivery, and for all the other 700 occupations that are going to be affected by this. So cat's out of the bag, can't ignore it. Big headlines, big ticket, big company, lots of drivers involved. Here comes the party.
Right. And so for those, if you haven't watched 13 Minutes yet, in a quick summary, I'll just say that my thoughts on this is, real quickly, we already have oversaturation. You're going to see oversaturation go even more, because this headline, as it is right here, even that I just put down there, Uber Lyft drivers, $32.50 per hour in Massachusetts. Well, that's actually not correct. It's $32.50 per active hour. Active hour right now in Massachusetts is 60 to 70% ish. So it's like you're already not active. And I think this, with oversaturation and the customers paying way more, we know it happens in every city. Every time they do this, they raise the prices on the customer. That makes the customers, if the customer needs to take a ride to the airport, okay, they're going to still do that probably. But if they're thinking about going to downtown for a little bit or something, they might just drive themselves now, because you know what? In the other cities, I don't know what the reasoning is. Maybe they take public transport. I don't know what it is, but we've seen it go down. It just happens. So I don't know. I mean, it's very misleading. Traveler, I don't know if he's in here, but he had said that, he had texted me or put a comment in 13 that said, if you're not making $32.50 per active hour anyway right now, why are you still driving? Like, you shouldn't be driving if you can't make that in an active hour. Again, guys, this is the misleading part. It's not $32.50 per hour. In fact, somebody who also lives in Massachusetts, Go Gig It, he said that it's $30.50 an hour to drive a public transit bus in Boston. So therefore, you use their car, you use their
right.
Like, you're not on the line. It's not your vehicle the whole day. You're working for a W-2, and you're actually getting paid for a real hour, almost this same rate.
I see the threat. One of the threats that goes right along with that, Steve, is that becomes a ceiling.
Right. And that's what I was trying to tell somebody. They're like, is this one of those floor meets ceilings? And I'm like, kind of, except for there's no floor. I feel like that's the one odd thing about this, is I'm like, yeah, but it really doesn't have you'll at least make this. There is no floor. You could make nothing.
Yeah. If you're not driving, you're not making anything. If other people are grabbing the rides, you haven't got the handle, you don't know where to be.
Yeah.
You're brand new, no rating.
I mean, I mean, I guess I'm just saying that, like, you know, if you're not taking the ride, so if, like, you're seeing fares where you're just like, oh, no, I can't do it. You're still in the same boat. So it's only applying to your active time. But if they're upcharging the customers more, paying the drivers less, none of that is worded. And we know how that works. It just will happen. And when that happens and you don't take any, if you work for 4 hours and don't do any rides, guess what you earned? You earned zero. This is where I think it gets weird, because I always say whenever they attach a dollar amount, you're saying, even if it's to active hour or whatever, you're kind of, again, it's everything against being an independent contractor.
Yes. The way I think of it in one phrase is, I think what this does is it makes the drivers in Massachusetts, makes them dependent contractors. Look at all the things they're dependent on that they weren't dependent on last week. You know, the best thing for being able to enjoy insurance type benefits is savings in the bank.
Yeah.
So, you know, and there's no provision for that. It's not like they're giving us, no, they're paying into state funds. So the state is laundering more of the revenue of the rideshare industry. It's laundering it through the platforms and nominally through the drivers, and pulls it out. And it's now helping the unions with their relatively insolvent insurances, occupational accident insurance, like workman's comp,
I was seeing all this, and the new million. I mean, first of all, I thought it was $1 million anyway to the passengers, but the new $1 million that they got on you too, and I don't know. I was pretty surprised. Whenever Uber makes these agreements, I know that they specifically only do it on calculations. Is it even worth it for us to even stay at this number? Is there any way that it works? If we have 10,000 too many drivers and we lower their rates to here, can we? And then if they can find a way to make it work and it avoids a classification law, so be it. Then they will make that agreement, as long as it solidifies the classification.
Steve, any business would be that way, and they should be, because one of the things that they tell you when you go to pricing school, however you go to pricing school, they say, when you set a price for your company's product, you have to take into account every single thing the company knows that goes into it and affects that price in any way. And I mean competition, I mean regulation, I mean risk, uncertainty, insurance, revenue, more or less of anything. All of that has to go into the price calculation, and that's been made here. There's nothing wrong with that. If Uber wasn't doing it, they wouldn't be any good as a platform for us to use, because they're going to be gone in a heartbeat. So they have to know what they're doing. And, by and large, I think Uber does know what it's doing. Now,
yeah, here's my guess is they literally went and said, okay, well, guess what? On average of active time, we're paying $31.50 right now out to the drivers. Well, let's tell them we'll pay $32.50 per active time. We'll guarantee it. I mean, I just don't. Again, I don't live in Boston. I haven't done rideshare there. I've done rideshare in my city though, and I know what to expect on an active hour. And I'm with Traveler and anybody else who understands this theory. I better be making $32.50 an active hour. Because if the wheels are turning, which is always a good saying in the gig space, you want the wheels turning, but you have to be making money while you're doing it too. So you got to be making more than $32.50 while you're dumping expenses like gas, wear and tear, all that stuff.
Sure.
I'm not even sure what is the real minimum wage in the state anyway.
I have no idea. I thought that was just always up on message boards.
I have no idea either.
Changes in the morning, like the traffic on I-95. I have no idea.
Are you one of those states where it's different in different places?
It could be. I've had a lot of employees, back when I had my firm, and I only paid one of them minimum wage, and after that, I thought, this is crazy. So we never dealt with it. Guys made 5-8 times minimum wage. Some made more.
Okay, so as of January 1st, 2023, the minimum wage is $15 per hour in your state.
In Massachusetts. All right, so you've got twice the minimum wage, but I mean, if you look at the calculation that they propose in the agreement, it's like got three variables, and the driver doesn't affect any of them. The drivers, even if all the drivers got together, all they could do is not go to work. It's the first one is it's the lower of this is how that 3250 is going to grow, right? Because that'll make us all we'll get a salary increase. Okay, it's the lower of 3% annual adjustment, which okay, fine, that sounds decent, except we've got 10% right now. Or the Bureau of Labor Statistics average annual inflation rate in New England. So the lower of the two. So if we go to 20% inflation, which has happened before, the rideshare number will be 3%. So the guys at Uber and Lyft and the men and women, they're saying, well, the chances of, 1% inflation are zero right now and for the relatively foreseeable future. So the 3% is a maximum. Now, then that's compared to whether the minimum wage increases or not. And then it would be a bump up to the minimum wage, an adjustment. But that, like we're dealing with 10% plus inflation as a practical, grocery store price item. So I don't see that 3250 has any chance of maintaining purchasing power. I think it's a short-term loss leader by the people who signed this agreement, because they both want to get an agreement so they can stop fighting in court and do something else with their lives. And I think that 3250 is like written in jello, one warm day and won't be worth a thing.
Well, the other thing too, I saved this for you, Mike, is that in New York, they do this same thing. They've done it for a while in so many different ways. It hasn't worked. We've watched it. It does not work. Everybody even admits it. Now what has happened with the platforms is, and it's become a real nightmare too, like even as a rideshare driver, which is unheard of, you have to schedule, you have to do this and that. It's based on how much you're taking, how many rides, what your acceptance rating is, your rating. There's all these factors that go into place to when you get to select blocks of when you'll work. But now, because of the same type of thing, the minimum payment where they add in the expenses and everything and say it's this much per hour that has to be paid. Now they're doing a thing where even if you're scheduled to drive, you can get locked out.
How so?
Because they just don't need you. They have enough drivers on the road. They can't afford to be screwing around with this.
Are they promising anything? Or are they just...
No. I mean, the promise went from being able to turn on anytime you want to being able to schedule block
this is
times.
in New York. You schedule, but the schedule isn't.
But now think of it like a bar. Now it's like, yeah, you schedule this shift on a Friday night. You show up and they say, you know what, we're a little slow. We just don't need you tonight.
Yeah, sorry. Find something else to do. Appreciate you coming in.
but that's new as of like the last few weeks, the driver lockouts, because they were at least saying, okay, just oversaturate it and you only get paid on the active time and whatever. But now it's become that people sit so long, like 3-4 hours
to get a job.
Yeah, because the oversaturation is just by the.
See, you guys, I think most drivers, particularly,
and then they raised the prices to the customers too. That also drove it down.
Right.
Like there's a thing called, I can't remember what it is, like a half micro transit or something, where now instead of taking an Uber from your house to where you need to be, you're now taking it to the subway or to a bus from your house. So you're taking it like a fifth of the way because it's just too much to take it right to work.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, we live 30 plus miles out of town and none of the roads go straight to the airport.
Right. So now they're doing these like 1 to 2 mile rides where you just get them to a public transportation.
Well, that's what I think a lot of people will do. I mean, places like Fenway Park, when there's a game, you know, you can't, unless you've got Spot Hero or something, and you can get to where you've got a spot, and you do have choices there. You're really better off just sort of parking in the interior suburbs someplace and just getting an Uber or a Lyft. You know, have them drop you off near it, whatever. And so, as opposed to taking it all the way down there. But now you're talking 3 modes. You know, you drive and he drives, and then then you walk because Fenway Park is absolutely congealed. you know.
Well, also you're thinking, I mean, to the drivers who are like, listen, last week I had a bad week, but I got all my scheduling blocks done this week. I think I can make my money with these blocks. Now they have to think, I don't know if I'll have those blocks.
Steve, one thing that comes to my mind is if this results, and I think it could, in an outflow of drivers from the platforms named, what is next for them? What would they be doing next if this thing just, you know, the pay got worse. It's all, you know, they're driving, the customers are fewer. It's more regulated. You have the New York problem where you reserve your time to serve them on their time, and then that falls through. I mean, guys are going to get tired of it. They need the money. And what are they going to do next? Will more? I don't see more people coming in to compete with Uber in this business.
No, in fact, Uber now dispatches yellow cab in New York.
It's like a masquerade ball. Who is that guy? You know, in the Indian hat. You know,
right? I mean, seriously, like, I mean, it's just like for years, those two hated each other. Like, couldn't hate each other more because of the medallion situation and whatnot. And now it's like, yeah, you can just get yellow cab through Uber.
Great.
I mean, again, you do have to think about it. Like, yellow cab doesn't have the database Uber does, so they do put them in as options. It's like you can see Uber X, Uber Black, Uber SUV, and then it's also got yellow cab.
So I don't know, maybe if any of our listeners have an idea of what they would do next if they decided that the situation for drivers in their area, I'd love to know what people would do, because
I think it either has to go backward and go back to a little more freedom, because you're basically removing all the freedoms of flexibility and everything. I think me and you too, Mike, know about independent contractorship. You keep removing all those pieces, you are going to be left with you're not going to be able, even forget the ABC test. You're not going to be able to pass just the easy test of an independent contractor.
Yeah.
It's going to be like, does the worker have any control over you? Absolutely. I can't use the tools I want. I can't go the routes I want. Can't get on when I want.
I'll get on when they let me on, which is, that just means you're an at-will employee for a very short period of time. And the government's this Massachusetts government's going to detect this very quickly, because they get the sample reports from the companies, and they'll say, look, hey, you know, so I am not a fan of this agreement.
No.
If drivers like it, I certainly hope they get what they want. I really do. But this doesn't look like any free market force at all. We've got this cudgel with ABC test, and they beat the two platforms over the head with it. You know, now what? You know,
I think the next step becomes W-2 or you know, which still would be W-2 to be franchise model, but who's stupid enough to buy a franchise in this stuff?
Right. In Massachusetts,
dude, nobody's going to buy listen, I hope everybody understands that. Everybody listening, this is obviously my opinion, but nobody's stupid enough to buy a Uber or Lyft franchise anywhere in this country, because your overhead of turnover of drivers would kill you in an unemployment.
Yes.
Your insurance would have you out of business in 6 months tops,
if you can afford it in the first place.
Yeah, but let's say you could. Let's say you went all in. You had some operating capital. You're done in 6 months, unless your whole first batch of drivers is the best and they do everything you say.
When did that happen?
And that this whole model was built on not having to do that. That's why we give a lot of the times as drivers, because we understand, listen, if anything in the actual model changes, that's when we leave. You know, yes, we've dealt with a lot of pay hits and things like that, but when you start dealing with, hey, I can't get on, hey, I can't work, I'm not seeing any, yeah, like Mike said, you're going to leave. Why wouldn't you?
You got to gross in independent contracting about triple what you'd make as your pay rate as a W-2. That's just, you got to capture the money that someone else would capture if they took the risk and hired you. and that money's out there. And if you can't capture it for some reason, then either you're missing some tool or you're not pricing it right. I mean, it's very business.
I mean, then again, a lot of people do have limitations that a W-2 wouldn't afford them. But I would still say, even to those people, Mike said, what, 3 times? I would at least say 2 times. So if like you could go be a delivery driver for $15 an hour, but they schedule you and you have no say in it, I would say you at least need to be able to pull 30 multi-apping to make that to make it worth it to be the IC. And I get that some people, and I would also rather say with Mike, yeah, you need to make 45. But if there's anything holding you back in your life or whatever, or you have commitments or, you know, family obligations or things like that, that could make a difference.
But it's your pay rate sort of naked without a lot of limitations. You assume a 40-hour week, you know, even if you know you can't work a 40-hour week, say, what would be my rate for me and my capabilities? And then you sort of say, well, the guys like that probably making 45,000 whatever dollars a year, or 60, something like that. So that's, you divide by 2,000, that converts it to an hour. So 60,000 divided by 2,000 is $30 an hour. So you got to aim for $90 an hour gross in order to pay all your expenses and accept the risk and the ups and downs and the hassles and everything.
So this Mike, before we get out of here, this is Ron from Massachusetts who sent us the video.
Okay.
With the flag behind him.
I remember Ron.
I know you do.
Thank you very much. Go dig it. Yes.
So here he is. His comment here just came in. The reality in Massachusetts is Uber and Lyft lowered their pay to $32.50 an hour, reducing Uber by times 1 hour trips from $50 for 60 miles to $16.50 in order to offset medical etc insurance.
So right there, you have the main secret. They say, okay, fine. If these guys, you know, in quotes, want benefits, we'll just take it out of their gross, and, you know, give them something bright and shiny like $32.50 that attracts everybody's attention, and we'll deduct it. And
here's Ron given the true independent contractor answer. I'll pay the benefits, meaning himself. They've included, because I've been doing this for 7 years and I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think this is where the AG and the platforms have figured out a way that make both of their situations better, and they took that part right out of the drivers. You know, drivers don't have a part in this. Are there any drivers involved at all? But that's the glory of the ABC test. Is the individual who's doing the work, who ought to be primary at some point in the conversation, isn't hurt at all. Not one single person that'll ever hear our voices was
we're trying to change that, people.
Consulted about this. That's why we're here. Very good, Steve. Thank you. And we're already, wow. Okay. So there's a lot to talk about, guys.
Yeah. Who knows what next week's conversation will be, but I feel like these keep getting good and you guys keep joining. We had some good numbers here today. So thank you for joining us here in the middle of Mondays.
Thanks. Go Gig It. That was great. I chase that quote all the time. I'll pay all the benefits they included, like I have been doing for 7 years now, without the pay reduction. Yeah.
Yes.
You want your pay to go up.
Right. Because you're an independent contractor. And if you get that, you don't want them deciding how much, because then it's what policy and stuff do you want to be in somewhat control. So
that's what Linda in Toledo said when we started those quotes. It's all about making money.
Yeah. Otherwise, the people who fight this and who voice themselves, we say it every week almost, are the people who want to be W-2 employees. Some of them just might not know it. I don't know. But we're on overtime, guys. We'll see you back here next week, and appreciate you always joining us on the Be My Own Boss podcast.
Steve, thanks. And thanks to all of you who watch us loyally. Appreciate it. Pass this around.